Welcome to a new session, and in this session we are going to see how to set up a MySql RDS instance on the AWS platform. Alright, so I hope that you have already reviewed the documentation related to this. So I have given it as a PPT earlier to this particular session. So please review that session once, where I have given a little more information about all the features of RDS also. Alright, so to access the RDS, please go under the services, and under the services, please go to database, and under the database, you will see the list of services here. Okay, so there will be many services: DocumentDB, DynamoDB, ElastiCache, Keyspaces, Neptune, but we are more focused on the RDS with this particular session. So click on RDS, and we will be taken to the RDS dashboard. Alright. Okay, just getting routed there. Good. And remember, I'm in Northern Virginia here. So at the moment, I do not have any database instances running. Okay, so let me go ahead and spin up what we are going to do is we are going to spin up a MySql instance, and we are going to test the connectivity to the MySql instance. Okay, to do that, let me go and click on DB instances. I don't have any DB instance at the moment. Let me go and click on create database. Remember, creating a database is quite, it takes a while. So you will have to give the system some time to, have it created. So allow some time for the creation. All right. So here we have two methods. One is the standard create and the easy create. We are going to go with the standard create. That way we will understand each of the options better. So here I'm going to use the select the engine type as MySql. All right. And so the edition that it is getting selected is the MySql Community Edition. So there are many MySql editions here, and I'll go for the MySql 8.0.20. Okay, the reason that I go for this edition is it is quite compatible with all my services, and also it seems to be quite stable. I have not found any issues here. Okay, so here when I come to the RDS instance template, I have three options. One is production, dev test, and free tier. And remember, with the MySql option, you get the free tier. With the Postgre also, you get the free tier. But with Amazon Aurora, you will not be seeing this free tier option. Alright, so we will select the free tier option for the instance type. So now, next has the deployment options, which is you have the multi-AZ DB cluster, multi-AZ DB instance, or a single DB instance. Okay, now, only if you go for the production option, you get the multi-AC DB instance or single DB instance. Let's check out with dev test. With dev test also we get the options, but with free tier, we will be not getting any options because by default it is going to be single DB instance only. Please remember this. In the free tier, you do not have the multiple deployment options. We have only the single DB instance option. The next option is the DB instance identifier, and here it is already showing as database 1. If you want to change it, you can change it, or you can leave it as it is. Next is the master username. Have a practice of noting down all this information, alright, because we will need this information later when we are going to connect to this instance. Alright, so the DB identifier, that is database -1, and username, that is admin, and the password I'm going to set is, I'm not going to auto generate it, I will set a new password. I'll call it as test1234 as usual. Okay, make a note of this also. There is test1234. all right. Then the DB instance class, since we selected the free tier, you will be seeing the option here to select DBT2 micro. And yes, because DBT2 micro is already free tier eligible, so we don't have to worry about that now. Next comes the storage here. So you have the options of the GP2 and IO and magnetic. All right, but at least for the medium level IOPS, I would suggest you go for the GP2 and not the magnetic. All right, select the GP2 here. And the allocated storage is, by default, it is 20 GB. So there is a minimum amount of storage that gets allocated to this particular RDS instance. And you can go to a maximum of 16 terabyte. Okay, so yeah, there is one option here with the storage auto scaling. Let's talk about the storage auto scaling. When we talk about the storage auto scaling, what happens is, you know, we tend, that is the, you know, when your database is getting filled up, okay, so when your database is getting filled up with data and it is reaching to a point where it is going to, reach 20 GB. All right. So what happens if you are going to be leaving it, unmonitored? Of course, you will not be leaving it unmonitored in a production environment. In the case that it is going to reach to, nearing the fill up of 20 GB, then what would happen is your services are going to be failing, right? So how am I going to be safeguarding against that? So to do that, AWS is giving us the option of the storage auto scaling. So what does it mean by storage auto scaling? So when the total storage is, when the free available space is less than 10% of the allocated storage, which means that in this scenario we have 20 GB. So 10% is like, when it is going to go more than 18 GB, then it will automatically scale it. Okay, it will automatically scale it, and the condition has to have existed for at least 5 minutes. It would increase by 10% of currently allocated storage, or 5 GB, whichever is greater. Okay, which means that in this case, by default, it will go to an increment of 5 GB of data. Like that, it will keep on increasing. But you can say, okay, this is the maximum that I want to increase to, and I don't want to go more than this. So here, the 1 TB is what is selected. All right. So I would say if you want to edit that, it's okay. Otherwise, you can leave it. Okay. So for this demonstration, I'm going to be disabling this. Remember, this is an exam question. Okay. Free available space less than 10% of the allocated storage. The low storage condition should have lasted for at least 5 minutes. And there should have been at least 6 hours of gap between your previous increment or the scaling and the scaling that is going to happen. All right. So that is the key factors, and you have to remember this in your mind. And this is an exam question, and quite frequently in some interviewers, some interviewers also do ask this question. So please do remember that. So, but I have disabled the storage auto scaling here. As for the default VPC, we can leave it there. The subnet also, you can leave it there. However, if you want to have a customized environment, you can do that. And remember, if your instance is going to be, your RDS instance needs to be publicly accessed. Let's say you are having a WordPress instance which is running on an entirely different, hosting company, and you want them to use the RDS service from AWS, then you need to have the public access, right? Okay, so let me select the public access. And as for the security group, I would suggest you always go to create a new VPC security group. For this particular demonstration, let's see that we use this. Or if you want to go ahead and create a customized security group for the Northern Virginia region, for the databases, you can keep it prepped up and ready. All right. And we'll call this security group as RDS SG, or we'll call it as SQL RDS SG. Okay. So I'm not going to put any preference into the availability zone. Very importantly, this additional configuration will be blocked. Will not be highlighted, or it will not be expanded. So just expand this and check out the database port. The database port by default for MySQL is 3306. So please make a note of this. All right. So what are all the other database authentication methods? You have the password-based authentication. You have the password and the IAM database authentication, password and the Kerberos authentication. But in this case, we're going to be using the password-based authentication only. And next, please do expand the additional configuration, because we have to give in some information here. All right. So let's call this database as database 1. All right. The previous identifier was -1, and I'm giving the database name as just 1 here. The default parameter group and the option group, we can leave it as it is. And you see the enabled automated backups is by default enabled. All right. If you want to enable it, you can enable it. But if you don't want the backups to save the cost, and if your your service is going to be not very mission critical, then you don't have to go for the backups. But in a production environment, you always need the backups, right? So leave it as enabled for now. We need to check up some other options. And here we have the retention period of the backups. So it starts all the way from 0 and it can scale up to 35 days for the backup retention. So whatever is the company or your compliance requirement, go according to the number of days. And and the backup window, if you want to select a window that you want to specify for the backup, you can specify this. If you leave a no preference, then AWS will do the backup automatically for us. But in this case, I'm going to be disabling this. Remember, the backup retention period is going to be an exam question as well as in the interview also. Alright, so you want to enable enhanced monitoring, we have the option here. The log experts, we have the audit log, error log, general log, and the slow query logs. Whatever logs you want to edit, let's say if you want to have the audit log, you enable this. Alright, and as for the maintenance, you have the option to enable auto minor version upgrades automatically. Remember, the entire RDS service is managed by AWS. We do not have control over this. So it's only the service that you're going to be using from the AWS. It's like you're taking the car for rental, and you're driving the car. Anything and everything is managed by the car rental company. Likewise, your maintenance and all that is going to be maintained done by the AWS only. Next, your maintenance window, you have option to select your maintenance window, which is mostly 00 hours of Monday. All right, if you want to select that, you can do that. Otherwise, you can leave it as no preference, and AWS will choose the right option for you. And you can see the estimated monthly cost. Of course, you have the deletion protection here. If you want to enable it, you can enable it here. Then you have the estimated monthly cost, where it is showing us what is the total cost estimated for this particular instance. And at the moment, since we are using free tier, we do not have any cost associated at the moment. But however, if you're going to be using instances from the for your development or test environment or for your production environment, all right, so then we are going to be going for the multi-AZ deployment, and that is definitely going to cost us more. And the type of instance is not also going to be T2 micro. You will have to use larger instances, and that is going to cost us for the resources. All right, so now that we have made all the necessary selections, let's review it once. So standard create, engine type is MySQL, edition is MySQL community, the version is 8020. As for the free tier, if you want to test with some latest versions, you can do that. The database identifier, make a note of it. And yes, I need to make a note of the DB name also, which was database 1. Alright, good. Then the credentials, the master username, master passwords. Then the DB instance type, T2 micro. The storage type by default is 20. I've explained about the storage auto scaling. Connectivity is the default VPC. If you want to create a custom VPC and secure your environment, but that should be in the event that you're not going for a public access, all right, or it's good for you to go with the default VPC. Or if you want to go with a custom VPC, and yes, of course, you know how to set up the custom VPC from the previous sessions, and create a new security group. Okay, that is going to allow 3306 port open for us. Choose the database authentication is the password based authentication. The database name we have given it here. Remember, always this will be not expanded, so we have to expand this and put in the information. All right, now let's create database. So now that I have clicked on create database, the database will start to get created, and the time to create a database usually takes like about 5 minutes, a little more than 5 minutes sometimes, depending upon the size of your database and the size of your instance that you're trying to create. So meanwhile it's creating, I'm going to pause this video and I'll enable it once the creation is completed. You can see that it is still creating. It's already past 2 to 3 minutes now, but we can still see that the status is creating. Alright, so now the database has been created successfully. It says here successfully created database 1. So you have the option to view the connection details. So please do make a copy of all this, and remember the endpoint information is going to be very important. Why? Because the database, when you are going to access the database from another instance, or when a place from where the database information is going to be given, usually we will be providing with the host name. All right. In this case, when we are going to be using the AWS platform, we have to provide the endpoint information in the host name. All right. I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to be demonstrating that. But please make sure that you understand that it is going to be the endpoint which is going to be the host name here. All right. So the status is available now, and it just got created in US East 1D. All right. So let me create on the data. Click on the database one. I just want to highlight about this group resources. We'll talk about this when we are going into the Amazon Aurora. Let me click on database one now. And yes, so we have the endpoint information here and the port number. So those are the key information. It's pretty much a straightforward service from AWS, because it's completely managed by AWS there. All right. So let's see. Let's connect this and see if it is working fine for us. So to do that, what I want you to do is you will search download SQL Electron. Okay, so if you have any similar tools, for testing the connectivity to the database, you can use that. But I'm using SQL Electron here. All right, so I have the option to download the GUI. So you can click on download GUI, and you have this page open up on the GitHub. Depending upon the machine from which you are accessing, let's say if you're going to be accessing it from a Windows machine, then it is ideal to go for the WinZip one. All right, this one. Or if you are accessing from a Linux machine, you can use the targz. Depending upon whichever environment you're using, you can go and select the right version. And for this version, I'm accessing from a Windows machine, so I'm going to use the WinZip. I have already downloaded the WinZip here and I have extracted it, so I'm going to be using the same. So I have the sqlectron.exe file here. Let me double click that and call the file. All right. So SQL Electron is coming up now. It is taking longer than usual for SQL Electron to start. Let me kill this and I try to start once again. Right. The step which I did was not required, to run as administrator was not required. However, if it's not working, please try to do that. All right. Now, to test the connectivity, let me go and click on add. So the name, this is a name or a custom name which you are going to be providing. All right. So let me provide something like this: AWS MySql RDS. All right. And the database type here is the MySql, and the host name here. Remember, I told you already, right? It has to be the endpoint information. So copy the endpoint information here and put it into the host. Okay. And the user was admin and the password was test1234, which I set it up earlier. Now all set. Let's test the connectivity. And the connection was successful. Okay. All right. So let me save it. Let me connect to it now. So you see that. So we have one database which is already created there. The tables are not created here. However, you can go and create the tables and you can do the functions on the database as required using the SQL query language, since this is a standard MySQL. However, I want to remind you of one information here, because there are chances sometimes that the security group will make your instance from which you are trying to access, or trying to create the RDS as the only instance from which you can connect to it. This used to be an issue in the past, but nowadays it's okay. But just to make sure that that particular point is clear. See, it is showing the source 34.86.86.116. So pretty much what can happen is, only from this instance which I am creating the RDS instance, I'll be able to access only from there. So this becomes a issue. So please do remember this. And if you're not able to access your instance from another machine, please go and try and check on the source. All right. If you want to secure it better, then probably mention only the IP address of the machine which is going to access the database. So that way we can keep the instance more secure. So that's how you manage the MySQL on the AWS platform. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next session.